as you probably guessed, the title of my lecture somehow changed. So it's not sexual difference and ontology. I won't be speaking about sexual difference today. There will be some talk about ontology, and I will come especially in the last part to this little bit more political questions. So actually I was trying to think what would be the title of this paper, and I came up with 3 titles. One could say, one could use a kind of philosophically deep-sounding title like Limits of Ontology. One could go for a more political title, Political Economy of Truth, but one could also use the Freudian title, This Is Not My Mother, which is also what I will be talking about. I have 2 now. So I'm afraid I will come back and repeat many of the points that were made by Mladen and also by Slavoj yesterday, already by Mladen today. So hopefully it won't be just repetition or repetition enough for it to produce something more than just bare identity. But I will really be coming back to many of the points that were already made yesterday and today. And first I would like to start with a point that I left more or less vague yesterday, namely this Lacanian identification of the real with the impossible. For this, together with the fact that, as I also emphasized for Lacan, the real is not some kind of a morsel of reality, some object that one takes from reality, this might seem to suggest that the real isn't anything concrete for Lacan, which of course it's very far from being the case. And if it's true that the real is not for Lacan an object or something objective in the usual sense of the term, it is also true, of course, that we encounter it precisely in the object, in the specific Lacanian sense of the term. That is the object that only enters in a correlation with a subject in fantasy, precisely. So today I will aboard this more like the objective side of this parallax of decision, of this split, and so on. And I will first try to track this notion of the impossible a little bit from Freud and to show what was where also Lacan took it to begin with, although he made then something particular with it, precisely with this notion of this object. So in Freud, of course, the category of the impossible is related to the notion of the drive and of its paradoxical satisfaction. And if one were to sum up Freud's arguments concerning the sexual drive from the 3 essays of theory of sexuality, which already Mladen mentioned, in one sentence, of course, one could perhaps say human sexuality is a paradox-ridden deviation from a norm that doesn't exist. I mean, after enumerating all kinds of vicissitudes and strange paths of sexuality in the passage that I will, of which I will quote just the concluding part, Freud compares a drunkard, alcoholic, to the sexual whatever drive, and he says that isn't it strange that a drunkard doesn't need to go to the countries where alcohol is forbidden in order to fully enjoy his drink. He doesn't need to change his wine every day in order to be able to really fully find the full excitement of the alcohol and so on, which of course is not true for sexuality. And then he gives this point, which I think is extremely important. He says, however strange it may sound, we must reckon with the possibility that something in the nature of the sexual drive itself is unfavorable to the realization of complete satisfaction. And I think so, where and what is the impossibility in this very precise formulation? First, it is clearly not the impossibility in the sense of an external obstacle preventing the full satisfaction of the drive. And it is also not simply a kind of internal or psychological resistance in the sense that the drive wouldn't, for some obscure reason, want to be fully satisfied. Of course, we are not on the level of desire, and it's dialectics here which would need some obstacles in order to sustain itself. We are on the level of the satisfaction and the paradoxes of satisfaction. So the paradox is far more interesting, for it rather seems that the drive is both at the same time, always satisfied and unfavorable to the realization of complete satisfaction.